Yeah, get these new numbers. The median rent in Manhattan rose to $5,000 a month in February, and in Brooklyn, $4,296.
Yeah, New York City broke another record, but it's not a good one, because not only are rents here the highest they've ever been, they're surging at a time when rents in other parts of the country are declining. But don't worry, New York's got a new communist mayor, and he's got a plan to fix everything by erasing what's left of the middle class.
The median monthly rent in Manhattan has now hit $5,000. In Brooklyn, it's nearly $4,300. But then if you ask New Yorkers, they do not need a report to tell them that.
We had been in a walk-up in Brooklyn for 4 years and rent wasn't increasing so much, so we stayed there longer than we probably should have.
This is an untenable situation. So today we are announcing that we will be taking action, stepping in to represent the interests of the city and the interests of the tenants and say once and for all who this government will be fighting for.
New York City landlords sounding the alarm over Mamdani's rent freeze plan.
When did this become an ATM machine? This is an ATM machine. This is what happened in New York City. This is exactly what was your unaffordable. Stop.
Right now, there are thousands of units that are not being rented out because it no longer makes financial sense. It's called warehousing. And what landlords are telling me is that if this rent freeze goes into effect, thousands more units will be taken off the market, which means everything that is remaining goes up in price.
So as New York City rents hit record levels, the fix is in to freeze them in around 1 million apartments. But what nobody's talking about is that if you do this, it's just gonna backfire and make the whole affordability crisis here even worse. And just like the plans for free grocery stores and higher property taxes, this isn't the only communist affordability cure having the opposite effect, erasing the city's middle class. And you've got to understand that while freezing rents might make life more affordable in around 1 million city-regulated apartments, the costs to operate the buildings those apartments are located in, those keep going up. And if landlords can't raise rents on some of the apartments, the other roughly 3.5 million apartments that are left that aren't regulated, guess what's going to happen to those rents? They're gonna go up. But there's more, because the mayor also wants to raise taxes and fees on businesses, who've also gotta pay rent, which is gonna make it much more expensive to pay employees and workers, while keeping Ben & Jerry's ice cream under $10 a pint. An absolute nightmare for people just trying to make it in a city where their studio apartments cost an arm and a leg and haven't been renovated in decades, while they try to afford the $10 milk at our grocery stores, which they won't be able to buy at all after those stores close down, after the free stores put them out of business, and then implode on their own after running out of other people's money. And that brings us to the real reason why communism is gonna do the exact opposite of creating an affordable city for every New Yorker, which was the mayor's campaign promise. You see, communism relies on other people's money, and once that money's gone, now what do you do? And as you're about to see, the real reason the new mayor's plans for America's first socialist sanctuary are already imploding is because New York's been flirting with communism since before he moved in. It just hasn't called it that, even though it's been out in the open for everyone to see, like the free hotel rooms for illegal immigrants and the city's ever-expanding housing voucher programs, which are mandated by local laws, all paid for and propped up on the backs of hardworking New Yorkers struggling to survive. And as you're about to see, things get even worse once you realize it's so hard to build anything here and create more apartments that people can actually rent, that the tiny amount of apartments that do get built, well, they're only for the rich.
Tough times in Mike and Sade. I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't know. Here in Gowanus, look at all of these new buildings behind me. There's construction going on every single corner. This is part of a new housing boom that's happening in Brooklyn right now. It's the new hotspot. And according to the new report, that rental market report by the Corcoran Group, rents are at an all-time high now in Brooklyn.
And that's because the apartments created in this new quote-unquote hotspot, which is the only place we've seen any construction of merit over the last several years, are so expensive most people can't even live in them. I mean, just look at these rents. This is crazy. You gotta be in the top 95% of Americans income-wise if you even wanna live in one of these places. But the protesters on the streets of this city don't seem to understand that at all.
There is only one solution! Communist revolution! Communist revolution! There is only one solution! There is only one solution!
Right, so here they are out on the streets advocating for communism, open communism in New York City, as if that's gonna fix anything. We've already run out of other people's money. It's already not enough to pay for unlimited things everybody else wants. But while people are allowed to protest for communism in this city, there's other things that you're not allowed to talk about at all.
Beating drums, traffic barriers and barricades, and blowing whistles, hundreds of local residents came out Sunday night to protest plans to build a homeless shelter next to the 25th Avenue D-Train subway stop in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, if you want to protest the ever-expanding homeless industrial complex in this city that just seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger, costing us more and more money while helping fewer and fewer people, oh, nope. Can't do that. At the exact same time, look at who's got problems affording a place to live. It's the people protesting. They're supposed to pay over $4,000 a month now to live in Brooklyn, over $5,000 a month now to live in Manhattan, and get what? A place where one hand can't even wash the other hand. That's what's out there right now. But if you say anything about it, you become the enemy. Instead, you're supposed to just stay quiet and ignore the fact that communism is already all around you and making your life more expensive. Watch this.
I certainly wouldn't be able to afford it. The apartment that I'm in, it's a 2-bedroom apartment. And with rent stabilization, it's one price, but the apartment above me, say, is a regular market rate. Yeah, you'd be talking $5,000. How do people do it?
So if you move to New York right now, you're paying $4,000, $5,000 a month. You get to do it so somebody below you can live in a rent-regulated apartment, which is about to have frozen rent. Isn't that nice of you? Thank you so much. Meanwhile, the landlords that own these buildings, they've got to provide certain things for all apartments, no matter what the rent is, which is why so many of them sit in states of perpetual disrepair because they just aren't worth renovating. You've got to pay heat, hot water. You've also got to renovate these apartments and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring them up to a level where somebody can even move in. And if that apartment's regulated by the government and it can only have rent that's so high, the costs go way higher than what you can actually earn on the apartment. And landlords are like, look, we can't afford to even stay in business with some of these places. That's also making our housing crisis worse. So even getting a rent stabilized apartment, it's not really helpful. I mean, these places are disasters because the city's created a situation where the best thing for the landlord is for the person living there to just move out and for the place to collect zero rent per month. And as you're about to see, things aren't great even for people who manage to move in to these expensive luxury apartments.
We've been in a walk-up in Brooklyn for 4 years and rent wasn't increasing so much, so we stayed there longer than we probably should have, and then we moved into a luxury building at the end of June 2025, which was a big jump up in rent for sure.
So this woman, she just moved into one of these new towers in an area of Brooklyn that built up a whole bunch of luxury buildings, and she says that the reason she moved was because she was in a place, she got trapped living there, she finally got out, now she's in a luxury building, but it costs even more. Like, this is a exercise in financial futility here. People are not building a life for themselves, they're not saving for the future, they're going paycheck to paycheck. Even while paying rent, most of the country could never even afford to live with roommates. This leaves most New Yorkers who are middle and working class completely in the dust, and it's erasing them and their future because they don't have a viable housing option. If your family expands and you're paying $5,000 a month to live with roommates, or perhaps you live by yourself in one of these 1-bedroom apartments that cost that much, good luck finding a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. Your rent is gonna double or triple. And this is happening in places like Brooklyn where the median income is $81,000 per year. People do not have a home to move into. They're either trapped where they are, or if they do manage to move and life changes, they have to leave the city and take their income with them. Opening up another 1-bedroom apartment for somebody who's gonna be here for a few years and then do the exact same thing. This is not creating a sustainable city. This is not creating an affordable city for everyone. Yet while we've got communist protesters roaming the streets, and while we've got a mayor who talks about taking down these landlords and making sure that tenants are protected, nobody wants to hear from the landlords at all. Nobody wants to hear from them. why it's so expensive to even offer housing in this city to begin with, because then the real problems with all these affordability fixes become crystal clear.
These are 4 units. You see 1 staircase here, 3 behind me. Back in 2017, when this was built, the property taxes for just 1 unit right here was nearly $25,000.
Wow.
Now, 8 years later, it's up to $44,000. You've seen a 44% increase in property taxes alone. Rent obviously hasn't gone up 44%. Landlords say this is all because of New York City government making the problem worse, and they fear it's only going to get to be a bigger problem.
Of course, because the mayor said he wants to come out and either tax the millionaires that own these buildings more or raise property taxes on these buildings. Of course, it's only going to get worse. And here's the problem nobody wants to talk about. There's only so much money you can get for an apartment that is a certain size. If only one person can live there, its earnings potential are capped by its physical constraints. You can't just build apartments that can bring in $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month in these places, because that's what it's going to take for the landlord to be able to stay in business. At the same time, that's not affordable for anybody. What an absolute disaster. But hey, this is the situation that we've created in New York. This is the situation that's forcing out families and middle-income residents, because after they pay their rent, they got to go to the grocery store and they got to buy the groceries. And even if we end up with free grocery stores, eventually the taxes are going to be so high to afford the free groceries that nobody's going to be able to afford anything here. Everyone's going to be just broke, walking around, waiting for somebody to give them something. That is communism 101 for you.
When did this become an ATM machine? Or an open checkbook? When do you get an open checkbook that you can write on any time, hey, we're going to increase it again. Hey, we're going to increase it again. This is an ATM machine.
Yeah.
This is what happened in New York City. This is exactly what was your unaffordable. Stop. This is what it is.
Right. This guy's got buildings to run, and he can't run them profitably because rents are frozen in certain buildings, or at least they will be soon. Right now, they're capped at levels that are so low, these apartments are already unprofitable, and his cost floor keeps rising. So what does he have to do? If he's got any market rate apartments left, he's got to hit the rents on those even harder. That's why we're seeing record rents at a time when rents in other parts of the country are falling. In other parts of the country, they got a massive housing supply. There's apartments that are available that people can run into. They're either staying flat, they're going down. Here, the supply gets thinner every year. And the only apartments that are available to rent, there's so many people fighting over them in the middle of this housing crisis because there just aren't enough of them. Landlords have no choice but to pass off their increased cost floor to whoever's left to rent something. They only need one person to pay $6,000 for a 1-bedroom. And if that person's out there, even though this is a bad situation for everybody, it's the situation that has to exist if New York wants to have all the free programs, you see. Meanwhile, it's the landlord's fault if the apartments don't justify fixing, or if the landlord's so broke he doesn't have the money to fix the apartments. Look at this.
What's happened? I can't remember exactly the year.
A year?
More than years.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani inspecting broken floor tiles in an apartment on Clarkson Avenue in Prospect Lefferts Gardens, getting a first-hand look at the deteriorating conditions, from an eroding bathtub surface to a rust-covered, corroded bathroom pipe and red paint splashed about.
And you told the landlord about this?
Yes.
And what was the response?
Call some numbers.
Okay, my first problem with this is who put the red paint on the wall? Did the landlord walk in and put the red paint on the wall? We don't know. Some of what you see in these apartments could definitely be the fault of the renter. But the other problem is, where does the landlord get the money to fix these apartments? They get it from the rent that people pay. And if their rent is capped, because you've got some buildings where all the apartments are stabilized, if the building can't earn enough money to meet the landlord's taxes and fuel costs and heating and repairs, he's not going to have money to send people over to these apartments, tear them apart and fix them up, which is what needs to happen. So we've created a situation of freebies that has actually destroyed prosperity and taken away the future homes of people who are living in them right now and don't understand why this situation even exists in the first place. It's sad, but we've been taught that capitalism's the enemy in New York. We've been taught that anybody who earns money is the enemy. We've been taught that, if landlords make money off you because you live somewhere, you're not living the American dream, you're trapped, they should be punished. But this is what punishment looks like. It's punishment that everybody experiences at once.
Residents in this same building and in others owned by the landlord Pinnacle Realty say they've experienced similar conditions, from leaking bathroom ceilings to moldy drywall. tenant unions rallying in response, demanding stronger tenant protections. We are the tenants! We are the tenants! On his first day in office, Mamdani made his first major policy announcement.
Okay, so look, we got these signs right here. All these apartments that are falling apart, these are all the rent-stabilized apartments. The apartments that are $5,000, $6,000 a month, those are the brand new luxury buildings. Those are the nice places for the elite of the world to move into. But the places that average people can afford are falling apart and destroyed, and they don't understand why. It's because we don't have a free market when it comes to housing here. We've got a market for people who are so rich that it doesn't matter, or that they're willing to live with a whole bunch of roommates just to get something that is, I guess you could say, nicer. But the problem here is there's no more room for the middle class. Where are they gonna go? If you don't have a rent-stabilized apartment already, there's no way to get one. These places were all taken. And even if you could get one, it's gonna look like what we're seeing in this video.
Signing 3 executive orders aimed at protecting tenants and fast-tracking housing across the city. He said this building, along with 92 others owned by the same landlord, is currently in bankruptcy proceedings and set to be auctioned off to a new owner, one who also ranks among the city's worst landlords.
Okay, but the building's bankrupt. Like, why aren't we wondering why in a city where average rents are $5,000 a month, this place is bankrupt and the apartments look like this? Because these apartments don't earn market rate. These apartments earn what the government allows them to earn. That's why they're a disaster. That's why they're making the lives of people miserable. That's why the middle class here is absolutely trapped. If you live in one of these apartments right now, it's all you're gonna get. If you move out of that apartment, you're not gonna be able to get into something that's $5,000 a month unless your income justifies that. If your income and your living situation and your family size dictate that you need to stay in one of these apartments to make it, well, this is all that there is. The government won't let you live anywhere else because of these bad policies, you see. And it's all because we won't build enough apartments for people to live in. We've got just enough apartments so that rents can hit $5,000 a month. We don't build 3, 4, 5 times as many apartments, which would create a massive supply of new places that are better than these, that don't have leaky ceilings and dissolving bathrooms, and that massive supply would bring down rents. But we don't want to believe in supply and demand here, and we don't want to give somebody the opportunity to profit when there's a supply and demand problem. We want communism. We're protesting in the streets for communism, and this is unfortunately what it looks like. We're learning about communism firsthand because we didn't learn it in school, did we?
In those buildings alone, there are more than 5,000 open hazardous violations.
I believe it.
And 14,000 complaints.
I believe it.
This is an untenable situation.
Right, so what are we gonna do?
So today we are announcing that we will be taking action in the bankruptcy case, stepping in to represent the interests of the city and the interests of the tenants and say, once and for all, who this government will be fighting for.
Okay.
The mayor also reestablishing the city's office to protect tenants.
Notice the solution to fixing the housing problem here isn't to bring new money into the housing market and free up all these bankrupt buildings to actually earn what they should be worth. These bankrupt buildings that are falling apart and that nobody wants to live in, you don't think there's people out there that have the money to turn these things around and turn a profit on them if they're allowed to charge market rate? These wouldn't even necessarily go for $5,000 a month in rent. There are areas of the city where nice apartments do not cost that much at all. It's all about supply and demand. You want to live in the popular areas, you want to live in the new hot spots, that's gonna cost you. But we need more supply. That's the problem, and studies have shown that more apartment supply, even at any price range, does help bring down rents. So we need to just pump this market full of places for people to move into. We've got to give people who live in these disgusting, debilitated apartments another place over here that they can say, you know what, I don't want to live like this anymore. I'm going over here because this is better. They don't have that. That's not there, and because that's not there, they're stuck here. That's what we're looking at. What do you think about that? Is communism trapping people? Are New Yorkers finding out right now that they voted for exactly what they're getting? Let me know. I will see you in the next video.